Hi there, I'm Joel from Jonesy's Auto Restoration and jonesysautoclub.com. We specialize in classic cars, hot rods, and custom 4x4s. Occasionally, manufacturers of parts and tools and equipment ask me to do reviews and to demo their new products. One such company is called Quick Cut. Quick Cut manufactures wet sanding systems for automotive refinishing. They came to me a couple months ago promoting their products, and I got to be perfectly honest, I was very skeptical. And they said, you know what, we're going to leave this stuff here, and if you don't love it, then call us up and we'll take it back. Well, it's been a couple months, and I have to admit, they were right. I do love it. It's a great system, it's well designed, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use it on a real project that I've got in the shop. 1939 Chevrolet trunk that came out of the booth a couple days ago. It has a run and it has some dust, all common things that you're going to get in your paint job. Using their system, I'm going to take that deck lid and turn it into a completely show quality finish. And I'm going to show you every single step of the way. You can check out all of Quick Cut's products online. You can request a DVD and get a whole bunch more information from their website at www.quickcutsanders.com. Quick Cut sells two different sanders for two different purposes. They sell a small sander, 3-inch, and this is used for getting out spot defects, pieces of dust, smoothing out a run, or really focused wet sanding. The larger one for kind of general orange peel and prep for polishing is their 6-inch. And what makes this sanding system so cool is the fact that the water is plumbed right in tandem next to the air line. So the water comes in and it gets distributed and it gets pushed out onto the painted surface while the DA is actually taking out all of the orange peel. Has a valve, a flow valve for the water here, and also a regulator for the air, so you can turn down. It's very adjustable so that you can really get just the right amount of water and just the right amount of DA action. Moving on to the other cool feature of the Quick Cut system is their variable pad densities. Okay, and so essentially it goes from dense pad being black through soft pad being gray. This will be much more aggressive, but it will make your panel really flat, and then going kind of up from there. It comes in the 6-inch and the 3-inch. Quick Cut does a fantastic job of providing really high quality media. When I say media, I mean the actual sandpaper. It lasts a really long time. I'd say probably lasts about twice as long as standard sandpaper. So you won't use as much material. It's a proprietary blend. They have it made by another company specifically for their sanding kit. Finally, they'll send you a bucket with a pump inside and a filter. And I put some tape around this filter because this filter is glass, and I did actually have one filter housing break on me when we were using it. Since then, I've been more careful with it, and hasn't been a problem. So for the wet sanding solution, you just want to use regular water. I like to use warm water, and then just put a couple drops of liquid dish soap in. You don't want to put too much soap because then it's going to foam up. The purpose of the soap is just to cut the surface tension of the water. So that it kind of lubricates and spreads out over the surface a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this bucket up, and then I'll show you how to put the Quick Cut system in the water and get it set up with air, and show you how to start cutting. So after you filled your bucket up with your soap and water, you want to make sure you hook up your sander to the pump. The pump has suction cups on the bottom of it, so you want to make sure that it goes all the way down to the bottom of the pump, or the bottom of the bucket, and gets stuck to the bottom. And then you plug your air right into here, and everything else gets regulated at the actual sanding head itself. So we are pretty much ready to go here on the water side of it. And now I'm going to show you how to properly prep your panel before you actually start sanding. So here's the trunk lid that we're going to be sanding out. And this is pretty typical of the kind of condition that you're going to see on any of your panels after they come out of the booth. We'll use 2021 clear coat made by PPG, and we've got 3 wet coats. That's going to be kind of your baseline of what you want to use. Now you can see there's a little piece of dust right there, and you can also see through those fluorescent lights some of the orange peel that we're going to be taking out. In addition, right below the trunk hole is a sag, and I'll show you a pretty cool trick on how to get that out. One thing I will note is that any holes that you have in the trunk itself, you want to put some tape behind. That'll keep the water from soaking through and making the underside of your trunk dirty, as well as preventing any buffing compound from soaking through. Now, anytime I polish parts that are not securely mounted on the vehicle, see there you can kind of see some of the little dust specks, I always wire them directly to the sawhorses that I'm working on, because it would be absolutely catastrophic for this trunk lid to fall off of the sawhorses and come crashing down onto the concrete. One final thing that I'm going to say is that you need to familiarize yourself with your buffer and actually the wet sanding process before you try to tackle this or use any kind of power tools. And finally, I'm going to take some tape and put some tape right over this edge, this corner on this trunk, all the way around, to help protect that corner, because that corner will absolutely get disintegrated if I make a mistake with the buffer or I make a mistake with the quick cut sander. So I'm going to get that taped off, and then we'll get to making this thing look pretty. So to prep this surface before we actually use the sander, you want to wipe it down and clean it with wax and grease remover as if you were getting ready to spray primer on. And one thing I will show you, if you come up closer, you can see how much I actually taped off this corner. It's not all the way into the surface. It's just barely over the edge, just onto the flat. And you don't want to get the tape out into here, because then what will happen is after you're done polishing, you'll basically have a tape line around the outside of your trunk lid or whatever you're polishing that has orange peel on it, and that'll look absolutely ridiculous to have this ring of orange peel around your part. So I'm going to get this cleaned, and then we're going to fire up the 3-inch sander and take out a run, and then we'll be in polishing. Okay, so I'm ready to start taking out all of the dust, and to do that I'm going to use the 3-inch quick cut sander. I've got it hooked up directly to my soapy water, and the way you turn on the soapy water is this valve on the side. Hopefully you can see it, but I just turn that valve a little bit and immediately water starts flowing out. So I'm going to grab a piece of 1500 grit paper, and I'm using the red pad, which is not the densest pad or the hardest pad, but it's close. And when you're doing this, you want to use the densest pad you can, as long as it's staying in a flat panel. The denser the pad, the flatter the surface is going to appear, because it's going to really grind down the high spots and make everything flat. So I've got it hooked up to the air, I've got it hooked up to the water, and what you want to do is you want to mark where your dust particles are, and then you only want to use this pad for around the dust particles to take them off. So I like to wrap the cord out, turn on, so I've got a little bit of flow. And then this right here is the controller for how fast how fast or slow your pad goes. So it's kind of a variable speed. So we find our dust particle. We just run right along that and feel for if the dust particle is gone. And then you just go around to every single one of those. And nub them out. And you can see my DA is not going fast. But you can see how that really does actually go pretty quickly. Now here's the area where I had the run. You can see how cool this tool is because it really it works really quickly. With that said, you know, you really got to respect it because this is removing a lot of material, a lot more than you realize. And so you got to make sure that you have enough clear coat on your panel and that you treat this stuff with respect, because you will basically ruin your project if you don't do this correctly. So you just want to go really slow and practice on something else. I mean, obviously I'm not going to take this system and pull it right out of the box and then go to town on my brand new paint. I'm going to go and get a hood or get something else and practice on. So I'm going to go ahead and finish nubbing out all the dust with the 3-inch, and then we're going to tackle the orange peel and the rest of this trunk lid with the 6-inch. So you can adjust the flow of water and also move the water bar up and down to put it exactly where you want it to go. So when you're doing this, you definitely want to make sure that you're in an area that it's not going to matter if you get 5 gallons of water on the floor. And also keep in mind that you want to work across this panel as evenly as possible. You don't want to spend too much time in one spot. I mean, it's kind of standard buffing rules apply. And again, be really careful around edges and holes and anything else that adds to the complexity of it. This is about the ideal panel for this sanding system because it's fairly flat, and I can go across this really quickly. Like, it would probably take me about 2 to 3 hours to wet sand this through all of the different grits by hand. And with this system, I can tear through this pretty quickly. I mean, it'll be ready to buff in less than 45 minutes. So I'm going to get to it, and then after you sand a little while, it's a good idea to check your progress with a squeegee. So if you come up here, you can kind of see the progress that I've made, and it kind of looks like it's still starting to look like the texture of a basketball in a lot of respects, because you still see the shiny spots, which are lower than the dull spots. And then also you can see kind of where I sanded out some of the little dust spots. So you want to continue going from 1500 or even 1000 if you have a lot of orange peel to 2000 and then to 3200. And then this panel will be really ready to buff. So you want to take it so where you don't see any orange peel and it's a uniform kind of a matte finish with the 1500. Then take those swirl marks or sand marks out with a 2000 grit before you ever even think about picking up the buffer. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this panel. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to say is that before you buff, you want to take this tape off and sand out any of these edges by hand. I always do all the edges by hand just because it's really too easy to grind off the paint or the clear coat on the edges of the panels unless you take it really gently. So I'm going to get this sanded out, and we'll go from there. So when you're doing this, I like to take the sander and work in quarters on the trunk lid. And I count. I go up and I go down, and then I go across on that one section that's the quarter. Okay? And you kind of do a random pattern. And then I move to the other quarter and repeat the same pattern. So go across, then you go up and down, and you can actually feel the sander speed up and slow down when you know that the panel is getting smoother. So you work your way across the panels and keep in track of how many times you have done it. And then when you think you've gotten pretty close, it's a good idea to check. And what you're looking for, you can come take a look at this, get up closer, is you're looking for this to pretty much have almost no orange peel in it whatsoever. And so this is I'm done with 1500. Now I'm going to move on to 2000. And by the time I'm finished with 2000, all of this will be completely and totally flat. Mirror finish, no little shiny speckles at all. So I'm going to do 2000 in the same pattern, working in quarters. Going back and forth, up and down, and then kind of diagonal on one quarter, and then the next quarter, and the next quarter, and work your way all the way around this trunk lid, and checking your progress every single time. It's important to squeegee off, because that will actually take the clear coat that's coming off and take any of the contaminants off, and gives you a nice clean surface. With the 2000 grit, and you can still see there's a couple of dust spots that have become apparent that didn't get them totally out with the 3-inch. So I'm going to go back to the 3-inch, and that's kind of how this process goes. You sand it, and then you clean it, and then you find more stuff, and then you sand it, and then you clean it. And so between every round, when I change grits, you always want to use the wax and grease remover and clean that surface off. And the reason you want to clean the surface off every single time is you don't want to contaminate the next step. So if you're going from 1000 grit to 1500 or from 1500 to 2000, you want to make sure that all of that sanding grit is completely off of the panel, so that it doesn't get trapped underneath the sander and cause more damage, because the point is to go up in the grits and not go down. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3-inch and nub out a couple more of these little dust particles, and then we'll probably be ready to go to the next step. And the next step after that, after the 2000, is Quick Cut sells actually 3200 and 4000, which in my opinion is technically like polishing. So that will kind of be our very first stage of our polishing. So now I'm ready to go ahead and swap the pads to the gray pad, which is the softest pad. Now as you go up in grits, in paper, like now I'm going to go to 3200, you want to go to softer and softer pads, because the goal is not to make it flat. The goal is to make everything smooth and to take out sand scratches. Finally get down to buffing, make sure that you familiarize yourself with your specific buffer, and always buy a buffer that's a variable speed, because when you are first starting out with the wool pad, you want to make sure that you're going slow so that you get comfortable with how the buffer's cutting, how it's acting. And then also, when you watch me buff, notice how whenever I come to an edge of the panel, I know that the buffer, as I'm looking at it, is turning clockwise. And so you'll see me tilt the buffer so that the pad is always going off of the edge instead of onto the edge. So you'll never see me buffing an edge like this. You'll always see me buffing an edge so that the pad is going off. This prevents the pad from catching on the corner and burning through. And I'm telling you, that will happen so fast that you won't even see it coming. So really pay attention to how the pad is rotating and how it's going off of the panel. So after using the quick cut wet sander with the 3200, you can see that the panel is actually got some shine to it. You can see some reflections. And so now I'm just going to start the buffing process. And what I'm going to use for buffer is initially just a regular wool bonnet, an 1.5 inch cut, and some Meguiar's Solo compound. I like the Solo compound because you use the same compound all the way throughout your buffing stages. All you do is change the pads. So you guys can watch me buff this thing out, and you'll see how quickly with the 3200 from the quick cut it gets to a pretty awesome shine. In just a short period of time with buffing with the wool compound, you really start to get a pretty phenomenal shine out of it. And the quick cut has made the panel really flat. This is not a substitute for good quality bodywork, of course, because you're not going to be able to take dents out. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to move very quickly and see really, really good progress. Now, because the sandpaper is so fine, you can, a lot of times, if you see additional flaws, just take the 3-inch and go ahead and just do a little spot repair right on the panel, and then just buff that one little section and it'll come out to a pretty awesome gloss. So. So I'm finished polishing and I've cleaned all of the buffing compound off with the final inspection and a microfiber towel. And the finish on here is fantastic. I'm going to talk a little bit about waxes. Being that this just came out of the booth about a week ago, do not put any wax, no carnauba wax, no paste wax. Don't put any coating on this surface at all. The surface needs to breathe. It needs to be able to outgas. And if you put a sealer coat of wax on here, then it can cause dieback and can cause some problems. You don't want to put your car cover on it. You want to just let this be able to outgas and to cure out. With that said, there are some breathable wax products. This is called Fast Wax. And you can put that on here and it will make this surface very shiny, very smooth. Anybody that's done this type of work before knows how long it takes to wet sand and polish this trunk lid by hand. I mean, you'll spend hours and hours. And I cannot reiterate enough how much of a time saver, when used correctly, the quick cut system is. And you can see by just the surface finish, I mean, this is really a show car quality. And I was able to do it in about half the time that it would normally take me to do this by hand. So any system that you get awesome results like we've gotten here and saves you a lot of time is a great product. Give the guys over at Quick Cut a call. They'll be happy to answer any questions, get you set up with the type of cutting system that's going to work best for your shop or your garage or whatever project you're working on. And if you have any other questions about any of the products, the process that you've seen today in this little video series, then contact me at info@jonesies.com. You can find us on YouTube at Jonesy's Auto Club, and let us know what you're working on and we'll try to do our best to help you out.